So welcome everyone. This is Matt Hardy, the Program Director for Planning and Performance Management here at AASHTO. And to all of you joining us out there online, welcome. We're excited to be back with the third episode of our new webinar mini-series focusing on transportation asset management tools. We started this series looking at the AASHTO portals and tools available on the website. Again, TAM-portal.com. And last week, we explored asset management systems. And for our topic today, we'll be looking at other TAM tools in use at transportation agencies. That is, tools other than management systems themselves. Our final webinar in this series will take place next Thursday, May 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and it will cover techniques used to apply TAM tools and advanced asset management capabilities within a transportation agency. If you want to register for that meeting or any of our other TAM webinars, or just catch up on any of the past webinars, you can do all of this at the AASHTO TAM portal. Again, that's tam-portal.com, and click on events in the main menu. You will also find the video archive of previous webinars, including last week's webinar, as well as the one on AASHTO portals and the related tools. Links to videos and slides from today's meeting will also be posted to the site in just a few days. And of course, you'll also find many of the tools that we'll be looking at during today's webinar. Well, not the tools specifically, but you'll be able to access many of the tools talked about during today's webinar on the TAM portal. Sorry about that. And finally, if you have questions at all during today's webinar, please use the chat functionality within Zoom. We'll have some time for open discussion towards the end of the session today. And again, use that chat if you have a comment, if you have a thought. If you have some examples of tools and other kind of applications that you're using for asset management analysis or to support your asset management program, put them in the chat so that we can capture them. And so please do that. And we're looking forward to your questions. But until then, until we do open it up for questions, please be sure to keep your line muted and keep your camera off for right now. And with that, again, thank you for joining today. I really appreciate everybody who's taken the time to join these webinars over the past few weeks. We've had, I think, on average of about 75 people for each one of them. So we're pretty happy with that. And as always, if you do have other ideas for future asset management webinars or performance management webinars, please let us know. You can email me at mhardy@ashto.org. You can put it in the chat and we will capture it that way. With that, I want to turn it over to the TAM lead from the Federal Highway Administration, Tasha Clemens, for a welcome on behalf of our wonderful co-sponsor, the Federal Highway Administration. Tasha, it's all yours.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. FHWA is proud to sponsor this special TAM webinar mini-series and the full TAM webinar series along with AASHTO. And I'm glad to have a chance to welcome all of you joining us here today. In our second mini-series installment last week, we had a chance to look at management systems in use at transportation agencies. We heard how agencies are using these tools today, and we learned about their plans for the future. In this third installment of the mini-series, we're going to focus on tools other than management systems. We've got a great slate of DOT speakers who will share with us some of the current capabilities of tools in use at their agencies. And we're very lucky today. We have my colleague who's joining us from Federal Highway, and that is Cherie Bidet with a great demo of FHWA's Info Bridge. And of course, I'm looking forward to hearing from many of you on the line who are using TAM tools in your agencies today. As Matt mentioned, we're hoping to open up the Q&A for some real discussions today. I'm looking forward to hearing from you during these Q&As, and I think you're going to really enjoy today's session. And so finally, as Matt mentioned, the topic of next week's mini-series installment is techniques for making the most of TAM tools. And I hope you'll be able to join us next week. So with that, I will turn it over to Hyana Park of Spy Pond Partners, who will be able to cover our agenda and objectives for today. Hyana?
Thanks, Tasha. So I'll quickly cover the objectives and agenda for today and then get us right into our presentations. The purpose of this installment of the TAM Tools webinar mini-series is three-part. First off, it's to raise awareness of the role of TAM tools in supporting strong asset management practice. Second, it's to understand some of the TAM tools and systems currently in practice at transportation agencies. And finally, it's to hear from you. We're looking forward to some great questions and suggestions and a great dialogue today. For the agenda today, we will start with a few Mentimeter polls to get you all warmed up. Then we'll have a series of brief presentations spotlighting the tools developed and used at 5 DOTs and at federal highways. We'll hear from Toria Lassiter from the Maryland DOT, Louis Fagans from Indiana DOT, Rachel Pivick of Wyoming DOT, Michael Weekly from Ohio DOT, Jehan El-Sayed from West Virginia DOT, and Shri Bide from Federal Highways. Following the presentation, we'll have a Q&A session and a couple of closing polls. Please do submit your comments or questions ahead of time using the chat feature in the webinar control panel. You can do this during anytime during today's presentation. Since we're using Zoom, you can also wait till we get into the Q&A part, and you can just raise your hand and share by voice. The slide and video from today's webinar will be available shortly following the event conclusion at tam-portal.com. All right, let's get started with a few short polls. Please go to menti.com and type in the code 97710516, or just click the link that Perry just entered into the webinar chat. All right, so we are just asking you first just to say, are you using a tool other than a management system to support your TAM program? So we're looking not at pavement, bridge, or maintenance management systems, but other tools. And if you could just, say yes or no. And then the next question you're going to get in the poll is if it's a yes, and it looks like many of you are saying yes, the next question will be what are the tools you're using in your agency? So, so we'll wait a few minutes to collect your responses. Looks like so far definitely more yeses than nos. All right, so those who haven't started the poll yet, just come in and answer this first question. And then Perry, let's move on to the next, which is, what are the tools that you're using in your agency? So ArcGIS, scope statements, project builder tools, database viewers, spreadsheet investment strategy tool, management of KPIs and technical performance measures, DTIMS and GIS collector, GIS, internally developed data hub and project builder tool, Esri roads and highways. Calculators for the various risk costs that might be applied to a given threat, basically built into an Excel spreadsheet. All right. This is great. Keep adding to this. Let's move on to the next and final question at the beginning here. And the question is, what tools do you wish you had to support your TAM program? So this is the thing you don't have that you would like to have. So Mdot tool, investment planning, Power BI, a time machine, none, enterprise asset management system, dashboards, automated maintenance and location, Mdot, public issue tools. So I'm guessing that's a way to collect information about what the public wants and is having issues with. That's what I'm guessing. All right. Enterprise asset management, automated inventory collection, common data repository for the entire agency, investment bundling and optimization. All right, this is great input. Maybe we can come back to some of this at the end of the webinar. So continue to just respond to this Menti poll, but let's go back to our agenda. All right, so let's move on to our presentations. Our first speaker today is Toria Lazater. Toria is Assistant Division Chief in the Office of Planning and Preliminary Engineering at Maryland DOT. She's presenting today on Maryland's Climate Change Vulnerability Viewer. Take it away, Toria.
Deanna, can you hear me? This is Meredith Hill.
Yes, hi Meredith.
Hi, Toria just texted me to say she's having technical difficulties. So
Okay,
seeing
all
as I
right.
haven't heard her, I wonder if there's a possibility that the next person in queue
Yeah,
might volunteer to go ahead of her.
yes, we'll Lewis, are you ready? Let's go to Lewis and then Perry could work with Toria to make sure she's on. All
Thanks,
right.
I appreciate that. I will defer to Perry and Toria.
Okay, thanks, Meredith.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. Louis Fagans is the Managing Director of Asset Management at Indiana DOT. Louis is presenting on advancing asset management at Mdot.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
I first wanted to start off with kind of showing one of the first things Mdot did was create my department. So we moved almost all our major assets underneath into my team. So bridge payment, road inventory, planning and technical services. So that was the first major thing that really helped our agency start taking in asset management. One of the things that Mdot did first was we developed a 20-year plan for every asset that we own. So every bridge, every road segment, we have a plan minimum of every 20 years. But for bridges, as you guys know, some of the treatments are beyond 20 years. So we've got 30, 40 years on bridges. But for every asset, we have a 20-year plan. That's one of the key things that we've developed for the agency is that 20-year plan for every asset to be able to manage it and be able to plan for and build off of that. One of the keys part of that is working that plan, automating that plan. You'll be seeing here in the next few slides how we've automated that and how we're turning that into GIS tools to be able to use in public meetings with other assets, for bundling, for creating corridors. Like I said, we've got every segment of payment, bridge, large culverts, sort of anything greater than 4 foot and less than 20 feet. And then small culverts, anything under 4 foot will be coming soon, as well as traffic signals, overhead signs, MSE walls, ADA, stuff like that. Part of that 20-year plan, we developed life cycle strategies for both maintenance and capital program. So if we build a new road or we rehab a new road or replace a road, we've got a plan on what we expect for to maintain that road at the lowest cost. So, you know, crack sealing, patching, blading the shoulders, clipping the shoulders, doing overlays. And we've got that for every type of road. So we've got some roads that we're going to chip seal every 7 to 8 years and then do a replacement or do an overlay. We've got the similar program for bridges, you know, flushing, cleaning, checking for debris, checking for scour. Then we also have, you know, doing a thin deck overlay, doing a rigid deck overlay, deck replacement, and then starting that cycle again as well. One of the biggest keys for us is, you know, we can go to the public and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. So, you know, we can pull up if we're meeting with a property owner or meeting with a representative or mayor, we can pull up that road segment of that bridge and say, this is what we're going to do maintenance wise over the next 5 to 7 years. This is when our next capital program is going to come in, so we can work together on sidewalks, multi-use paths, fixing stormwater, fixing potable water and sanitary sewers. It also helps, you know, with our maintenance long range planning and how much maintenance crews we need and what type of materials, and we can see trends and issues. We can develop scoping projects, you know, start scoping those projects sooner. One of the challenges that we have is allowing us to be able to talk to both our asset owner and our construction saying, hey, yes, you don't think this is a major project, but this is a project that's going to buy us 7 or 8 years so we can do a replacement with an ATL or do a replacement with, you know, more other work. So, you know, hey, don't modify our plan, don't modify the design, because this is what we're planning on doing. So, you know, working with that, you know, setting up some crossovers and MOT things to maintain the project. One of the things, you know, by having that life cycle, we can model every road and every bridge, do the finance, make sure we're going to meet our goals and show that we're meeting our goals. So Indiana, you know, we had a tax increase 5 years ago. And part of that increase was we have to have our bridges in 97% good and our roads in 95% good of fair condition. So by having this life cycle, you know, we can modify and manage that aspect as well. Like I said earlier, you know, by having that 20-year plan, we can go in and map that and show those plans and show that location. And, you know, we'll be able to, just had a meeting with the executive office last week where we were working in, you know, Indianapolis area and worked on the interstates and showed, hey, this is how we're going to maintain every segment of the interstate and meeting those needs and meeting those goals. And we found out that we were going to have, you know, in 27, 28, we were going to have 2 corners of the beltway under construction at the same time. And basically couldn't make it, well, we couldn't get around the city of Indianapolis. So by having that 20-year plan and having that process, we were able to say, hey, we need to move this one back a year and modify some stuff. So it allows for that long range planning. Part of the, you know, that 20-year plan is, you know, the first 5 years are in program, you know, they're in construction. The second 5, you know, years 6 through 10, that's plus or minus 1 year meeting our goals. And then the last, you know, 10 years, 11 through 20 or beyond, you know, that's a plus or minus 2 or 3 year window. And a lot of that is, you know, being developed with our D10s modeling and that process. But like I said, by having all that information and that data, we're able to go in, so break it down by our regions or districts. We can show what activities are going on, what activities should be going on, what maintenance activities are going on. And then, like I said, we can use our road analyzer tool So if, the commissioner is meeting with the governor, and they say, hey, I'm getting complaints about this road segment, he can pull it up, look at it and show him exactly what pavement conditions we have, what maintenance work's coming up, what's out there, or, if we're driving down the road and you're like, hey, this road's not looking as well as it should be, what is our plan? We can pull off to the side of the road in a parking lot and pull this up. It will find us automatically and pull that up and see what information we have. And we can adjust that. So if I want to see stuff is different from what, a pavement engineer or bridge engineer is doing. One of the other tools that we've been using and we've developed is our scoping app. So with the 20-year plan, we can pre-populate our scoping process, upload that information. So when the crews go, the team go out in the field, they have a lot of the information already there, and then you can start looking for other issues and other projects going on. If there's been emergency repairs going on, so we can look at issues like that, so we can take that in account. We can look at, start detour routes and options like that, so we don't close one road and on top of a detour route, another road's going to use this as a detour route. We can improve the process. We can automate uploading automatically, the location of it, the length, traffic information, county, sub-districts, a lot of the information that we use for our scoping app and automate a lot of that coming in. And then one of the biggest things that I know Mdot had a lot of issues on is making sure we do the estimates. So they have to fill in, hey, do we have to push this right away? How much is that? Is there railroads? Is there utilities? Is there ADA, items that needs to be upgraded and fixed? And then the great thing about this is once the project is selected, if it's in the 20-year plan, it's not being modified, it automatically goes into our capital program, automatically uploads into that. So that's saving weeks of time of having to re-enter in data, fat fingering data and stuff like that. And then the last two that I'm really excited about, and Indiana's got lucky working with Federal Highway and Everyday Counts 5, is our bundling and corridor program. We worked with with Federal Highway to bring a machine learning AI team on board, and we're developing bundles and corridors, and we're now working on taking our 20-year, the next 3 to 4 years of our 20-year plan, uploading it into our machine learning AI program, and bundling projects over years. So there's a bridge in 28, roads in 29, a large culvert in 27. The model will look at it and we built business rules in saying, okay, hey, let's move the bridge back 1 year, move the culvert back 2 years. Instead of having construction on the same road 3 years in a row, we can combine that and make it a bundle and do work that way. Or, hey, there's, on State Road 1, there's 2 bridges, but on the next road over, there's 2 other bridges that are a year out. Hey, let's combine those and do a bundle. So I'm very excited about being able to look over 3 to 4 years of window time and be able to do multi-year bundles and stuff like that. So if anybody has questions on that bundling program, I would happily be able to answer all of those. So that is what we're doing, advancing asset management in Indiana. So I will stop sharing and pass the baton over back to you.
Okay, thanks, Louis. And if you have any questions for Louis, put them in the Q&A, the chat function, or hold it for after all of the presenters are done. So we have Toria now. She's the Assistant Division Chief in the Office of Planning and Preliminary Engineering at Maryland DOT. and she's presenting on Maryland's Climate Change Vulnerability Viewer. Take it away, Toria.
Toria, I think you may still be muted.
We can't hear you, Toria.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay. So, thank you all for being here today. Good afternoon. I'm Toria Lassiter, Assistant Chief of the Innovative Planning and Performance Division at the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration. And I'm glad to share the work that we do through Mdot SHA's Climate Risk Resilience Program to support Mdot's mission to provide a safe, well-maintained, reliable highway system that enables mobility choices for all customers. Next slide, please. So Maryland is a relatively small state, ranking 12th in the U.S. by landmass, with a very diverse topography, ranging from sandy dunes in the east to low marshlands with an abundance of wildlife near the Chesapeake Bay. We have rolling hills and forested mountains to the west. But we also have approximately 3,100 miles of coastline, which is particularly susceptible to the effects of climate change related hazards like sea level rise, storm surge, and extreme high tides. And our state has lost 13 islands to sea level rise and land subsidence in the last century, with sea levels in the bay having risen by a foot in the last century. And we have other islands at risk. And in fact, while sea levels are rising worldwide by an average of 1/10 of an inch, in some locations in the Chesapeake Bay, relative sea level has been rising especially quickly, with like 4.6 millimeters per year because of this. Also, approximately 70% of flooding statewide happens inland and can be attributed to extreme precipitation and riverine flooding. And so, with Maryland being in the top 20 most densely populated states in the country and having a little over 71,000 lane miles of road, over 500 bridges, Mdot has been for over a decade working in partnership with other transportation agencies to address the challenges of maintaining the state's transportation infrastructure in the face of climate change related hazards. Next slide, please. So one of the things we do in our program, Climate Risk Resilience Program, is to collect and analyze climate data to inform decision making. And we've performed a number of assessments to identify which assets are most vulnerable to climate change related hazards and what some of those impacts might be. And we've developed also a GIS-based methodology for assigning criticality to our network. Next slide, please. And so building on a 2014 FHWA pilot to complete a climate change vulnerability assessment to identify specific roads and bridges most vulnerable to flooding in Anne Arundel and Somerset counties, in 2018 we performed an assessment, an asset management pilot project actually with FHWA, the final report of which is named Integrating Extreme Weather and Climate Risk into Mdot SHA Asset Management and Planning, which had two main focus areas: refining and expanding the vulnerability assessment performed in 2014 by applying an indicator based on the FHWA VAST tool, the Vulnerability Assessment Scoring Tool, to develop vulnerability ratings for all bridges. And for the assessment, we'd applied indicators based on, basically the approach uses data on asset location and other attributes to serve as indicators of each of the components of vulnerability, including exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. And the assessment approach used scores assigned to each indicator to develop an overall vulnerability score for each asset across 3 climate hazards: sea level change, storm surge, and precipitation. And also we sought to identify specific opportunities to integrate the vulnerability assessment results and other climate risk information into processes at Mdot, including asset management, planning, design, and operations. Next slide, please. So we used the results of the statewide road vulnerability assessment to develop a hazard vulnerability index. And HVI provides a comparative risk value for road segments to climate change variables, including sea level rise and precipitation events. Nearly 100 miles of roadways expected to be permanently inundated by 2050, mostly in Dorchester and Somerset counties. And the numbers are even higher if you look at the amount of roadway that would be flooded at high tide, or mean high or high water. And there we go from nearly 5 miles flooded at high tide statewide to over 290 miles by 2050, and that's a nearly 60-fold increase. Next slide, please. So we'd also piloted a vulnerability assessment methodology at the corridor level, the Maryland 450 and US 50 corridor, to demonstrate a quantitative process to support Mdot SHA in implementing quantitative risk assessment techniques for incorporation into risk-based asset management programs to improve system resilience. Next slide, please. And so we visualize all of these assessments, the results of these assessments, in the Mdot SHA Climate Change Vulnerability Viewer. It's an ArcGIS Online, or AGOL, web application that showcases geospatial data products related to climate change and the potential impacts to the state of Maryland's transportation infrastructure. And the purpose of the application is to support Mdot SHA senior management, asset managers, planners, designers, maintenance, and operations staff as they make efforts to avert and mitigate potential impacts of sea level rise that result from global climate change. And in general, the CCVV is a tool for communicating projected climate change impacts to Maryland's transportation infrastructure for their decision-making efforts. We have at this time over 100 layers in the app. So just to review at a high level, some of the data we have here in this slide, we show nuisance or sunny day flooding, our sunny day flooding layer, and that is essentially the flooding that is expected to happen even in no storm event. Like, it's a sunny day and we have high tides, and it's flooding associated with just tidal flooding. And so this layer is based on the state of Maryland's latest LIDAR data in the form of flood depth grids, which, like I said, shows the projected impacts of flooding due to tidal inundation for the years 2020, projected for the years 2020, 2050, and 2100. Next slide, please. We have here flood depth grid data showing the projected impacts of mean sea level rise now and in the future, and mean high or high water for 6 storm event scenarios for years 2015, 2050, and 2100. And those storm scenarios being this no storm event, 10-year storm, 25-year storm, 50-year storm, 100-year, and 500-year storms. And so this essentially is, during these different storm events and the precipitation associated with these storm events, what is the expected flooding associated with a 2-foot, essentially 2-foot increase to the sea level at during the our baseline year is 2015. So if you add that essentially 2-foot projected rise to 2015 levels, and then you add the precipitation associated with these storm events, what sort of flooding are you expected to get? Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Perry. Thank you. Here we have our roadway inundation, flooded roadways data, consisting of linear geometric features, which represent the geographic extent of roadway segments projected to be impacted by changes in the mean sea level or high tides by storm event scenario for the years 2015, 2050, and 2100. As you can see, when you select a segment, you get a call-out box that gives statistics on the segment, including the projected depth of flooding associated with that storm event and that year. You get the route name, functional class, the county, whether it's a bridge or not, if it's an evacuation route, the hazard vulnerability index rating, with the HVI being the output of the roadway vulnerability assessment, and the segment length. Next slide, please. So Hurricane Florence, which was a Category 4 storm, I think at its strongest, hit the state of North Carolina in September 2018 with devastating impacts. And the event caused concern among coastal communities in Maryland because that storm was expected to make landfall here. And we at Mdot, SHA, thought it would be of particular importance to be able to model what those flooding impacts would have looked like, would have been, had that storm actually hit us, so that we could plan accordingly. So following data products have been developed to depict projected impacts to the state of Maryland from an event of a similar magnitude. So we have the roadway inundation, which shows essentially what the surge and flooding would look like on the roadways. The inundated parcels, what parcels would be impacted by inundation associated with that storm, and the flood depth grids. So what would the kind of level of the water be in the bay? Next slide, please. So we have a actually variety of other climate change related data products that we've included in the application. And we actually, when you go in there, you'll see that we have a list. We have state emergency road work events in there. We have tidal gauge information. We have what we call our Part 667 layer. For those of us who are working on our TAMPs, associated with the TAMP, we have to do reporting of governor or presidential declared emergencies and what sorts of repeated catastrophic damage to bridge or pavement assets that have happened repeatedly during these events. And so we're actually tracking those in our Part 667 layer, which is embedded in the viewer, such that when we have to perform that assessment for reporting either in the TAMP or when FHWA requests it, we have it geospatially. We include travel time index data. We include just a number of things, critical areas, FEMA floodplain boundaries. So that is it. If you have any additional questions about our tool, please feel free to call me or Jessica Shearer, our consultant program manager. And that does it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Toria. Next up, we have Rachel Pivick. Rachel is the Program Development Engineer with the Wyoming Department of Transportation, and she'll be presenting on Wyoming's project selection tools.
All right, thank you. So we are going from Maryland, which has many, many miles of coastline and is a small state, and it's densely populated. Wyoming was 0 miles of coastline, and it's a large state that is very sparsely populated. So we're getting a good amount of variety today, which is really good. Our project selection is rapidly evolving because we went from not very many years ago, just the districts being able to select their own projects and having that be how they ended up in the STIP, to utilizing department-wide data and decision-making processes to create those projects. So of course, I know that we're not supposed to mention our asset management tools in this webinar, but I have to because it's kind of the genesis of how they end up in our STIP. And we use recommendations, a candidate list from our bridge and pavement programs, and they use BMS, they use AASHTO BRM, and for our PMS, we use Agile Assets. And those programs come out with candidate lists where the districts can select within their budget for the year, they can select their projects from that candidate list. So that's the last mention that I will talk about our asset management tools. So once they get into the STIP, then we are starting this new process with our scope statement. And I think it's really cool that Lewis also mentioned they look like they're way farther along in their scope statement tool, but we are just kind of starting this. It's brand new for the districts, that once they select a project, we have a scope, and that includes all of the things that we could maybe think of that would affect the project, or things that may need to be combined with the project, like if it's a paving project and it looks like there are some bridges on the project that are in bad shape. This is the point where we start to identify those. One thing that's really come out of this, which is very interesting, is that we haven't had a huge presence of safety chiming in on our projects before. But with this scope statement, we're getting some more of a safety mindset right at the outside of a project, rather than it coming along the way. And the beauty of this is really in its routing to all the programs that will be concerned with the scope. So it's not just a piece of paper that gets created and filed away. It's something that gets routed, and there's a comment period so that all the programs can comment, hey, have you thought of this? We would like to add some chevrons on these curves. Is this something you've thought of? So the one thing that we really, really need to be able to do this scoping process really effectively is access to data. And our data, I'm sure this is the same with every single DOT, our data is spread out through many, many different applications. Some are web-based, some are living in a spreadsheet, and no one outside of the program has ever seen a lot of these data repositories before. So what we are trying to do is take every data source that we possibly can get throughout the DOT, and we are putting it in our state planning and operational database. And that's SPOD for short. And I was stuck with that acronym when I got this job. So I didn't come up with it, but it's growing on me, the SPOD acronym. And what it is it is a homegrown Apex tool. And if any of you are familiar with Apex, it works with Oracle tables to allow them to be displayed and used by people who are maybe not data savvy, that they're not going in through a more complex way, that they can go in and view this through a web browser, and they can see the data that they need to complete their projects. And this is for Wide use. Everyone at Wide has access to this. And at first it was kind of a slow start getting off the ground, but now I think a lot of people are seeing the value in being able to see the data. It's been really a culture shift for us, as people have been very compartmentalized in what they do, that they want to see their piece of the data, and they don't want to know what the other guys are doing. But this has been a huge shift for us. And it has allowed us to be able to look at things that we hadn't been able to consider before as those projects are getting built. Now, in conjunction with this, we have another Apex tool that is called our Project Builder. And man, we have been working on this for quite a while. Initially, it was a very, very simple concept. We thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could take all this SPOD data, and as we are creating a project, it can automatically fill in a lot of these asset categories based on the location. You input the location for the project, it's going to pull them in, and then that way people don't have to go hunting for it. It's easily accessed. We're not going to have people pulling incorrect data for their scope statements. And the irony of this is that something that is intended to put a fence around the project right at the beginning and prevent a lot of scope creep, this project has had a lot of scope creep. And I think it's because we've realized that there's so much nuance within projects, and to be able to create something that will pull in all these projects and work for them all. So you can see I've got up on the screen here, these are little cards, which is how Apex looks. And you click on all those cards and you enter the data that you need to enter, and a lot of it is automatically pulled. I feel like we're really close with this tool. And I think that it fits our needs really well, because we are a state that is kind of in its infancy as far as department-wide data and getting that data to be shared. And so right now, these simplistic tools, I think, are working really well for us. So hopefully, maybe sometime in the near future, I will be able to report that our project builder is up and running and that the districts are using it to create their projects. So those are our tools that we are working on. And thank you for your participation. And that's all I had today. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Next up, we have Michael Weekly from the Ohio DOT. Michael is the Geographic Information Management System Database Administrator. He's going to be presenting on their ADA compliance tracker. Take it away, Michael.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
So I will make screen shared. All right, so I have my screen shared right now. I'm going to do a demo rather than a PowerPoint slide. So at ODOT, a problem that we had is with our ADA rights of way inventory. Our ADA program coordinator, she came to our team asking if there's a way that they could use our tools that we have to do self-evaluation so they can submit an ADA transition plan to FHWA. A little bit of background, our team works what we call our collector program. I'm gonna show that right now. And with the collector program, we have different assets in there. So that's where we collect our culverts, highway lighting, ITS. And we thought, well, why not just put any type of ADA assets in there as well, which can include curb ramp inventory, So it includes the ADA pedestrian facilities, so push buttons, curb ramp inventory, crosswalk, and so on. So we said, sure, we can do that. Normally for something like culverts or highway lighting, you have someone go in there, they put the culvert down, and then they do an inspection of some sort on it where they can say how many, they can give a rating to certain parts of the culvert. With this ADA project, what they want to do is, well, our main objective is to find out, is this ADA asset ADA compliant or ADA non-compliant? So one of our biggest issues that we had at ODOT is the lack of expertise at ODOT for ADA compliance. The people that usually did know all the rules to ADA compliancy, they did not have the time to go out and find all the ADA assets that were owned by ODOT and then do those measurements to find out if it was compliant. So what we did was we got everyone in the room together and started talking about, you know, what do you need to know something's compliant? And I'm going to click here on my screen to just kind of give an example. So this is a curb, that dot represents a curb ramp. And here's some things that are needed. You have to know your ramp slope percentage, your cross slope percentage, and so on. Then at the end, you would, from those numbers, you would know if it's ADA compliant. We had a lack of time whenever we were doing this as well. So we knew that with our lack of resources to go out and measure, that we would have to hire outside to get the measurements for us. So someone came up with this great idea is, well, if these measurements that you're taking are very objective, teach people how to make those measurements, and then we can run a tool, we can run that point through a tool that will tell you automatically if it is ADA compliant or not. And there's some unintended consequences with that as well, because it actually really helped because we did that once. And then there are some changes to, I'm not sure if the changes came from FHWA or if those changes just came from ODOT and some things were missed. But instead of having someone to go out and remeasure all of our curb ramps or do something like that, we just had to tweak our geoprocessing script to run through. And I'm going to make up the numbers right now, but say that the ramp slope had to be less than 8. Maybe now it was 7. We could just change that in our script saying find the ramps that have a ramp slope less than 7%. And now that is ADA compliant. And then it would go through and find that. So it was really helpful. So a lot of work in the front end for people to actually have to go out and measure, do those objectives. But we could use interns, we use highway maintenance workers to do that, which is was really helpful. And then this tool that came through did that ADA compliant or non-compliant, and then we got to have actual like our ADA experts at the agency look at this and then actually created reports and dashboards for people to use. So just real quickly, I'm in our development environment right now. And if I just click on this one down here, I made some numbers up where this one is going to be ADA compliant. So I was in the field, I made all these measurements. Curb ramp was had the most criteria rather than the other ones like the push buttons and refuge islands. And what you'll see down here on the bottom is ADA compliant because I have not ran the tool yet. It is blank. And then the one on the top right up here, I did the same thing where I put numbers in here, but I made these numbers either higher on the slopes or the widths and the lengths shorter. So they are not ADA compliant anymore. And if I scroll down here, ADA compliant is also blank because I just haven't run the tool yet. So this tool, I'm just gonna go and run it. So yes, we're still using Art Catalog. There's GIS people out there. It will take about a minute to run because it does go through all of the dots that we have on the map, depending on it. So I'm gonna let that run. And while that's running, I'm just gonna show the script. I'm not gonna get very deep into it, but this is what the script looks like. It's using a lot of if statements going through and saying, all right, if the ramp slope field is greater than 8.3%, then the compliant field is no. And then also the good thing about this too is that we have other fields that control different fields. So if the traffic control is signalized, then something else happens versus if traffic control is not signalized. So we had some GIS developers that created this. Let's see if that tool has run. So it's still going through here right now. It just finished. So now what I should see back in the map that I created here, I'll just zoom in and zoom out to give it a little refresh. Remember, this is live. So I'm going to scroll down here. So here's my ADA compliant one. So before it was blank, but now it determined that yes, this passes that compliancy test. So it gave us that yes right there. And this one, as you see, there's now a red halo around it, which means it's ADA non-compliant. And you'll see the same thing here if I scroll down to the bottom. Now that ADA compliant equals a no. And even based on those numbers that I put in there, it actually gave it a high priority because I think one of the numbers I had was way, that was a bad number. So it gave it a high priority that this needs to be looked at. And our ADA program, our ADA 504 coordinator, she uses this information to now self-report to FHWA on the plan, on the use, like when does this need to get fixed? So again, this is our development environment. And also just to show what our production environment looks like, here's just a quick example here of what you can see. These are the different inventories that we look at. The ones with the red squares are non-compliant for whichever reason. You guys can click on the squares and it'll tell you why it's non-compliant. So for this one right here, it's non-compliant because our flare slope fields are not filled out correctly. But what I can do here is click, and you see this one is compliant. And what's cool about this as well, using the software, is that they could attach photos from the field. So you can see this one is ADA compliant, nice and wide. Wheelchairs can get on and off it pretty quickly, or sorry, easily, not quickly. And then while this one is ADA non-compliant up here, again, there's a picture you can look at and you see this one is maybe doesn't have the width or the length to be considered ADA compliant. So that's the tool in itself. And again, our ADA 504 coordinator, all this just goes to reports and dashboards. So here's a dashboard that we have for our ADA assets. And over here on the right, most of our assets that ODOT owns, pedestrian facilities, do happen to be non-compliant. So we are now working on creating projects to correct those. So even though that number looks really bad, it was worse before, but as we've been implementing this, we are seeing more green here. So that's what's helped us put that that ADA transition plan to FHWA. So that is all I have for the tool. If anyone has any questions or you want to look at what we have and the logic that we use, even though I showed you the script itself, the Python script, but we have all the logic written out in layman's terms of, you know, if we have a manual, just put that on the screen here that shows our different types of curb ramps we have, how we measure them, and then actually the numbers that we're using to make it compliant or not.
Thanks, Michael. There's a question, but we're going to take it after all of the presentations are
All right.
complete. Okay?
Thank you.
That was great that you were able to share that with us. Next up, we have Jihan El Sayed at the West Virginia DOT. Jihan is the Chief Engineer of Programs and Performance Management and the TAM Manager. I'll hand it over to you, Jihan.
Thank you, Juana. Good afternoon, everyone. Michael, would you stop sharing your screen, please, so I can share mine? Thank you. Okay, so several interconnected activities have supported our integrated TAM and TPM approach over the past 5 years. The main intent was to build a performance management program supporting meeting federal highway TPM requirement while also building our internal staff capacity, data management, and decision process for the TPM and the TAM. In parallel to this effort, we also rebuilt our pavement management system and built our very first bridge management system in West Virginia, along with some standard operating procedures on how leadership and staff should utilize these tools to inform asset management decisions. On the heels of submitting the initial TAMP and the baseline TPM reports in 2018 and 2019, we developed a new statewide 2050 long-range transportation plan, creating a family of plans approach intended to connect the agency vision, goals, and objectives to strategic planning, programming, and performance management. As part of this joint long-range planning TAM effort, we have developed several key tools to help disseminating the performance data and enable trade-off decisions between investment scenario and performance outcome. So a key outcome of this integrating planning TAM and TPM process, it was a clear desire from different stakeholders for reliable and transparent access to performance data. So we worked with our consultant to develop a site that we decided on naming it Performance Connection. It based on an ArcGIS hub environment, enable access to the full depth of the data associated with the 15 applicable federal highway measures for West Virginia. Within this system, we included education materials, data download capabilities, and access to 4 Power BI dashboard, safety, pavement, bridge, reliability, and freight. It enables filtering the data by geography, data comparison, mapping, and individual asset performance information. So we committed resources to regularly update the website with the new data as they become available. And while moving forward, opportunity to expand the system to include other federal measure and emerging state measures like bridge and pavement on off the NHS assets. This tool will just went live, and we're requested MPO and our divisions to provide feedback, so we keep on enhancing the tool. So I will get off the PowerPoint and try to provide you with the demo here. So please. Okay. So this is how the performance connection looks on our website. It's mainly in the, we provided all kind, we try to group all kind of educational information on the performance measure in general, the national goals, little summary tables on all the performance measures area. And then for each performance area, we just put the rule in there, what do we measure and how we're performing, just showing the trends. on each specific area. And same for the bridge and the pavement. Just try to collect all the information in one spot for all our MPOs and districts, especially our internal staff that were not very familiar with the rules and the performance measure, and that could be very educational to them. Then we'll move to the dashboard. So far, we have 4 dashboard in there, but we're planning to add more as we get the data that would enable us to. So we have 1 for the bridge, 1 for the pavement, 1 for the safety and reliability. And actually, the safety was very well received from all the MPOs because it was very like a lot of the other presenter mentioned about their where the data is everywhere. It'd be very difficult to get their data sorted by their county and get all their information and shape files. So it was really very important to them, and they said it's going to help them a lot in their meetings and communicating to the public. So try to go over one of the dashboard to show you an example of it. So we mainly have it sorted by our 10 districts or the MPO so far. So you can click on the MPO, choose one of our 8 MPOs, and then you can drill it down to the county, and it would show you here. This is like the statewide measure in the few years that we have reliable data in there, and this is how it compares to the MPO area itself. And then you can sort all the bridge in the MPO area, filter them, export them. It's all in BIS data for each bridge. Same here. If you click on it, I will show you the condition of the bridge and all kinds of information. It's direct export from NBIS data, and same for the districts. And also it has capability to download the data, zip file or Excel, and be able to sort it by county, by MPO, statewide. Any kind of information could be exported for each area or statewide. So it would be a spreadsheet that they can work on and add any additional information they want. So we have similar for the other areas, and I'm not going to go through in respect of your time through each one of them, just showing you the safety because it's a little bit different. And again, we have it as compared to for each district, by county, by year, and of course we have more data for back to 2013 for the safety as it started earlier than the other performance areas. So this is just a quick overview of the dashboard, and we keep on adding information in there, and hopefully we'll get more feedback from our users and keep on improving it. Then I would like to share another tool with you that we're working on right now. So I'll go back to my PowerPoint. And Hyana, can you see my screen?
Yeah, but I'm seeing your notes. You might go to the bottom of your PowerPoint screen and click on the icon. Yeah, right there. Click on that. Let's see what
Right.
happens there. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I just need to go quickly.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So the second tool I would like to share with you today that also came with the LRTP development is just a simple Excel-based program level trade-off analysis tool. This tool allow us to ask two questions. How much do we need to spend to achieve a target level of performance by select year? Or if I spend this much annually across different programs over multiple years, what are my expected performance outcome? So the tool is set up to enable the user to distribute the funding across 5 programs: NHS bridges, non-NHS bridges, NHS pavement, and non-NHS pavement, and also NHS and state system roadway capacity and operations. So in the LRTP, we had 5 different scenarios that we assessed to determine performance outcomes through 2031 and 2042. As shown here in the 2 graphics on the slide, the pie chart shows the difference in performance across all the 5 categories here in a bridge priority scenario, where we allocated $100 million shifted from the roadway capacity investment over to the bridges. So we showed what would happen in the performance if we do that. So the tool is being updated with new data from our bridge and pavement management system, and will actually be used this year to guide management level discussion regarding the next 2 and 4 years target for the bridge and pavement measures. So the tool enable us to enter like a plan year here, like you see on the top left. Under plan, we can enter what's today baseline annual funding by program, and a proposed scenario funding by program. Under performance, we can enter the future year target, and the tool will estimate the performance outcome. So in this case here, where I'm having an example, is the tool with segments pavement and bridge condition by in West Virginia by Turnpike, non-Turnpike NHS, off NHS owned. So here are the results of the 2042 scenarios of a bridge priority, showing the impact of shifting funding from the pavement asset management and additional funding for bridge from the general fund to support to enhance the performance. These results are compared against the baseline consistent with the 2019 TAM assumptions and other funding scenarios. Really, the intent was to start with something simple to communicate the big picture, trade-off and analysis, and eventually we'll be looking at moving toward a more sophisticated tool. So with that, I'm done. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today, and we're continuing to mature our performance measurement practice to make it really a central aspect of our focus on being a data-driven organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Shehan. That was really interesting to see the progress you guys have made. Last but not least, we have Shri Bide from the Federal Highways presenting on their InfoBridge product.
Thank you, Yun. I'm going to start sharing my screen. I do not have a PowerPoint. I will simply show the portal, the FHWA portal called InfoBridge. I suppose you guys can hear me fine, right?
Yes.
And you can see my screen?
Yes.
Good. So this InfoBridge is a bridge portal, FHWA's bridge portal. It is, you can simply Google InfoBridge, FHWA, and this will come up. The very first hit will be this site. This is free. The web portal is free, and it does not require any login information. The reason for developing this web portal basically was to provide easy access to bridge data. And InfoBridge stores a vast amount of data on all the 618,000 bridges in the country. And the data types include the National Bridge Inventory, well, 618, 619 now. NBI, NBE, National Bridge Element Data, climate data, and also the data collected by FHWA on selected bridges. InfoBridge has various tools to help you query this information and present it in the form of maps or PDF reports, or even all this information can be exported to Microsoft Excel. InfoBridge additionally, apart from providing access to data, has several tools which can be used to prepare your transportation asset management plans. And today we saw several different tools that are being used around the country. InfoBridge will be an additional tool that can be supplement what is being done at various DOTs for their plans. We will look at just a few of them today. I know we are running short on time, but I will complete my presentation in 5 minutes, maybe 6. So for asset management, the number one criteria is to have an inventory of the bridges that you're managing. So for that, InfoBridge offers several filters, like, for example, state name, different bridge types, different material the bridges are made of. So you're trying to focus a certain group of bridges in certain county, certain city. All of that can be done using these filters. There is also an additional filter for like MPOs. So for example, you may want to look at an MPO in Virginia. This, how do I get rid of this? Can I do this? Sorry. All right, so the Central Virginia MPO, and when we select that, it comes up with a list of 239 bridges in that MPO. Those bridges can be seen on the map. We need to increase the size of this marker and then simply zoom in. And all those bridges are shown here. There they are. So you can see them on the map. And of course, we saw them in the selected bridges table. For all of these bridges, all of the NBI fields are shown here. These, again, as I said before, can be exported into Excel. The second thing you want to do is to look at the current state of affairs in terms of the bridge condition. The current condition, as well as how they have been performing over time. And that is available under Performance History tab. So here you can see that those 239 bridges, the different breakdown of in number, good, fair, and poor, and in terms of deck area. And down below, the same information, the historical information is shown for good, fair, and poor bridges. The another important aspect of TAM is performing gap analysis. Gap analysis is done to find the gap between the desired and forecasted condition of bridges. And you can do that, and basically you do that to figure out the proper plan for preservation, rehab, and reconstruction of bridges. So if you go to the performance forecast tab, again, we are looking at those same 239 bridges. And here, first of all, it shows you historically how they have been performing in terms of number of good, fair, and poor bridges. And then you can use a couple of models here for deterioration models, survival model or machine learning model. Let's look at this first one. And in terms of limited preservation, if we only apply limited preservation to all of these 239 bridges, this is what is forecast. The number of poor bridges are going to continuously increase, and number of good bridges are going to drop. That's not something that we would like to see. However, you can see if we change that preservation level to a maximum preservation, and now this forecasting tool is showing you that the number of poor bridges stay fairly low. In the number of good bridges do drop still, but not at a significant rate. So this is a great tool to come up with an idea as to how many bridges should you be targeting. Now, this is only gives you number of bridges that may be transitioning from good to fair or fair to poor over a certain number of years. There's an additional tool here in InfoBridge that you can use to come up with a list of bridges that may be transitioning, let's say, from fair condition today to perhaps in 2032, a poor condition in 2032, over 10-year period, and with a probability of occurrence of 50%. Now, when you click on the display result, out comes a list of bridges that you should be targeting. There are 15 bridges listed here, and with specific state name, of course, is all Virginia, and the structure number, and you can look at all those bridges in the selected bridges table. Finally, there is another tool here. Performance. Oh yeah, we did that. So once we know what kind of bridges we need to target, what sort of funding is available, and how much is going to cost for various preservation and reconstruction actions and so on, there is one more tool that I would like to show that's available under analytics, and that's called asset valuation. The asset valuation tool again looks at the same 239 bridges, and at a unit cost, replacement cost of $228 per square foot, and you can change that. It tells you, gives you the list of all those bridges and how much their replacement value is, which is basically the deck area times the unit construction cost, unit replacement cost, and also the existing value of that bridge. Existing value of the bridge is really the replacement value reduced due to the load carrying capacity or the so-called operating condition, and also the condition of the bridge in terms of good, fair, poor. So that you can use these numbers to figure out what is the proper action to take, whether to preserve the bridge, rehab the bridge, or reconstruct the bridge if the existing value is really very, very low. So these are just some of the tools I've shown you today. There is a lot more to InfoBridge. So I invite you to go try it out and see if you can use it. If you have any questions, you can ask them now if there is time. But if not, please contact me anytime at shri.bhide@dot.gov. Also, please note that we do make presentations on InfoBridge at various meetings and conferences. And if you are interested in having us present InfoBridge to your staff, please contact me. Yoon, that is my presentation.
Thank you for that presentation, Shri. That looks like a really valuable resource that more people should definitely know about. All right, so thank you everybody for a great set of presentations today. We have probably a minute for a question. Sorry, we ran out of time. There is a question that Sarthak Prasad asked, I think Michael Weekly, whether that was a regular ArcGIS tool you use, and if you could share some of the tool information. Michael?
Yes, so it is a ArcGIS tool. We used a model in there that we just pushed up to a geoprocessing service. So geoprocessing tool that we pushed up to our ArcGIS server, and that's how it runs every night. So right now it's developed in ArcGIS desktop. So I can, I don't know what's the best way of sharing that tool. I can send you the script, or I can send it to the organizer and they can send it out with the notes.
Yes. Okay, so Sarthak just gave his email that you can send that to on the chat.
All right, I got it. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, both of you. All right, so we do want to take 2 polls before we conclude today. So we wanted to ask you to ask what was the most valuable from today's webinar, what you found most valuable, and then also what you would like to see more information about in the future. So let's go through those polls and we'll share your input, and then we'll close the webinar after that. And thank you to all of our presenters. That you know, it's so fun to see what everybody's doing, and like the collective genius of all of you. I think if we could share across agencies better, we would, you know, the whole country would do more with less. But I think that's what the purpose of today, this webinar series is. And we want to just keep the sharing going. And as you all know, this webinar is going to be available, both the slides and the video of it. So if you think someone else in your organization should see it, you can find it on the tam-portal.com site and look back at it. All right, so it looks like, yeah, Nabby's put the link to the closing poll into the chat so you guys can look at it. People like the state DOT examples, the info bridge, the project scoping from both Indiana and Wyoming, the climate change vulnerability viewer, the live tool demos, people like that. The Arcgis ADA compliance modeling tool from Ohio. That's great. And then the next, Perry, do you want to move to the next? And we'll have the complete set after we're done with the topic. So keep responding to this poll. So, so people would like to see the part 667 within climate vulnerability. Maybe so kind of to be able to see that interfaced with a climate vulnerability viewer is what I think you're suggesting. Life cycle planning tools. Like to see more about the West Virginia TPM tools, quantifying and incorporating climate change into investment decisions, GIS, more GIS tools. That sounds great. Just keep adding to this list. This will help us with planning for future webinars. So again, thank you to all of our presenters for excellent webinar, and also to all of you online for making your input. We're going to be back next Wednesday with the fourth and final installment of the TAM Tools webinar mini series. And we're going to be focused on techniques. And I think we're going to get a bit of tools with some of the techniques. So, so please come back, those of you who are here who are interested in the tools. And again, check out the AASHTO TAM portal to see information of this webinar, past webinars, and more about future webinars. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.